He was a man who had everything the world could give. His mansion stood like a palace on the hill, with tall gates, perfectly trimmed gardens, and shining cars parked in the driveway. People in the city knew his name, or at least they knew of his fortune. He had made millions over the years, worked hard, and had built a life that many only dreamed of. But despite all the success and the luxury, he felt something missing. He realized that people often looked at him with a certain respect that came not from who he was, but from what he had. That thought stayed in his mind for weeks. It grew quietly, but it grew stronger every day. He began to wonder, if he were someone ordinary or even someone poor, would people treat him the same way? Would they smile at him? Would they care? Or would they ignore him completely? He thought about this a lot, and one morning he decided to take action. He wanted to see the truth for himself. Not through stories, not through gossip, but by living it at least for one day. He called it an experiment, though to him it felt more like a journey into reality. He would hide behind a disguise, pose as a beggar, and sit in front of his own mansion watching the world pass him by. It was strange even to think about it. A millionaire, one of the richest men in the city, pretending to be someone with nothing. But that strangeness excited him. He wanted to know the truth, even if it was uncomfortable. The preparation was not easy. He needed to look the part convincingly. He put on old, worn-out clothes that had stains from long use, shoes that were scuffed and dusty, and even a hat that had seen better days. He took a small bag with him, the kind a person might carry if they lived on the streets. He practiced walking with a slight limp, lowering his head so that people would avoid looking directly at his face. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The man staring back had none of the polish or the confidence of the millionaire. He looked like someone the world would easily ignore. That was the point. That was exactly what he wanted. When he stepped outside, the city felt different. The streets seemed louder, harsher somehow. People walked quickly past, talking on their phones, carrying shopping bags, or hurrying to catch a bus. He positioned himself just outside his mansion gates, but not too close, so he could observe without being noticed. He sat on the curb, rested his arms on his knees, and let the world pass. At first, he was surprised by how quickly people ignored him. A few glanced briefly, frowned, and walked away. Others didn't even look. It felt like a strange kind of invisibility, and at first he almost laughed at it. But soon a different feeling took over. It was heavier. He realized that most people are focused on their own lives, their own problems, and they don't notice the struggles of others. Even more, they often judge quickly. Some muttered under their breath about the beggar outside the gate. A few shook their heads. One person even laughed as they walked past, assuming he was some kind of joke. But not everyone treated him poorly. Around mid-morning, a woman passing by dropped a small coin into his cup. She didn't stop, didn't look back, but he noticed her kindness. It was a tiny gesture, barely noticeable, but it meant more to him than anything money could buy. Later, a young man carrying a paper bag of food stopped and offered him a sandwich and water. "I hope you're hungry," he said, simply smiling. There was no judgment in his eyes, no hesitation, only a simple desire to help. That moment made the millionaire pause. He had expected to be ignored or laughed at, but kindness had found him in the most ordinary form. He realized that generosity didn't come from wealth, it came from the heart. People with almost nothing could give so much more than those with everything. He felt a mixture of gratitude and shame. Gratitude because of the human warmth he experienced, and shame because he had assumed that only rich people could make a difference in the world. As the hours passed, he saw the city from a perspective he had never known. People argued loudly on the streets, ignored children asking for help, or hurried past those in need. Yet occasionally someone would pause, even for a second, and show care or concern. It was a small reminder that even in a harsh world, kindness survived. He watched a mother gently tell her child to share a snack with him. He saw a shopkeeper drop a few coins into his cup when he wasn't looking. He even noticed a man in a suit glance back twice, hesitate, and then continue walking, unsure of how to react. Sitting there, he thought about his own life. How often had he walked past someone in need thinking it wasn't his problem? How often had he judged people by their appearance, their clothes, or the size of their wallets? It was uncomfortable to admit, but today he saw it clearly. In this moment, dressed as a beggar, he was not protected by fame or wealth. He was human, just like everyone else, and for the first time, he truly felt empathy for those who lived a life without privilege. He also realized that it wasn't just about money. Some people with little to give offered so much more than he could have imagined. The kindness he saw today wasn't measured in coins or bills, but in the willingness to care, to act, and to connect. That realization struck him deeply. He understood now that respect and humanity were not bought or earned through status. They were freely given, quietly, often without recognition. By late afternoon, fatigue set in, but he stayed seated, observing, reflecting. People had started noticing him more now. Some laughed openly, others whispered to each other, and a few stopped to offer help. But he noticed something else too. Their reactions were not just about him. They revealed their own hearts, their own fears, and their own struggles. He saw how quick people were to judge, but also how even the smallest act of compassion could light up a person's day. He took a deep breath and smiled, even under the dirt and the disguise. This was more than an experiment now. It was a lesson in humility, in observation, and in understanding the world as it truly was, without the protective shield of money and fame. For a man who had everything, it was perhaps the richest experience of all. And as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, he knew that tomorrow would bring even more surprises. The day had started as a simple experiment, but it had already changed him. He was no longer just a millionaire. He was someone who had seen the world through a new lens, someone who had felt what it was like to be invisible, judged and yet occasionally loved in small, unexpected ways. Sitting there, he realized he had one choice left: continue observing and learn more, or reveal the truth and see the world react to the millionaire behind the beggar. Either way, his heart was already changed. Today was just the beginning, and he couldn't wait to see what the next part of his experiment would teach him. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual, even before the sun had fully risen. The events of the previous day lingered in his mind like a vivid dream. He had been invisible to most people, yet he had seen a depth of humanity that money had never revealed to him. Today, he decided, he would continue his experiment, but he would pay even closer attention. He wanted to see more, to understand more, to really experience how people treated someone who appeared to have nothing. He dressed again in the old, worn clothes, making sure they looked even more tattered than yesterday. His shoes had new scuffs, his hat looked dustier, and he even added a few layers of dirt to his hands and face. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The reflection was someone who could be ignored, someone who could easily be passed by without a second thought. That was exactly what he wanted. He walked slowly to the same spot in front of his mansion. The city had already begun to stir. Cars honked, people shouted greetings to friends, and children ran past with laughter that filled the air. He sat on the curb, resting his arms on his knees, and waited. Almost immediately, he noticed differences from the day before. Some people passed by quickly, eyes fixed on the ground or on their phones. They didn't even glance at him, as if he were a shadow on the sidewalk. Others stared briefly, curiosity mixing with discomfort. Some muttered to themselves about the beggar outside the mansion gates, shaking their heads as they walked away. It didn't take long for the first interactions to happen. A woman carrying a bag of groceries stopped and offered him a small piece of bread. She didn't speak much, but her gesture carried warmth. He noticed the kindness, simple yet sincere. Then a young man approached, holding a cup of water and a sandwich. "Here, take this," he said, smiling. "You must be hungry." The millionaire accepted the gift, nodding silently. It was amazing to him how people with so little could offer so much. There was no judgment in their eyes, no questioning of who he was, only pure human care. As the morning passed, more people came by. Some were curious, whispering to friends or family members, pointing at him and laughing softly. Others ignored him completely, walking with a kind of protective bubble around themselves. He watched closely, taking mental notes on how different people reacted. He noticed that some judged quickly based on his clothes or appearance, while others showed compassion without hesitation. It was a strange, eye-opening experience to see people reveal so much about themselves without even realizing it. Around midday, a delivery worker stopped in front of him. He looked around cautiously, then offered a sandwich and a bottle of water. "Don't need anything in return," he said simply. "Take it." The millionaire accepted, moved by the gesture. They started talking quietly. The worker shared his life story: long hours, low pay, struggles to support a family. He didn't complain. He simply described his reality. The millionaire listened, feeling a mix of admiration and humility. Here was a man who had so little yet gave so freely, while he himself, with so much, had rarely experienced this level of honesty and simplicity in human connection. As the conversation ended, the delivery worker walked away, leaving the millionaire deep in thought. He realized that people with little often had hearts bigger than those with everything. Kindness wasn't measured in wealth. It was measured in action, in willingness to care, in simple gestures that cost almost nothing but meant the world. He had never understood this until today. The afternoon brought even more variety. A group of children ran past, laughing and playing, some stopping to offer him candy. Their innocence struck him. They didn't judge him, didn't care about his appearance, didn't ask for anything in return. They only wanted to share something small and make a person smile. He smiled back, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. It was amazing how little things, a piece of candy, a smile, a wave, could bring joy to someone who appeared to have nothing. Then something unexpected happened. A man in a business suit paused, glancing at him curiously. He looked uncomfortable, unsure of how to act. He hovered for a moment, then hurried away without saying a word. The millionaire watched him leave, thinking about how people react differently when they encounter someone they perceive as less fortunate. Some ignore, some judge, some give, some hesitate. Human behavior was unpredictable, yet consistent in revealing the heart of the person. As hours went by, the reactions became more intense. People began talking to one another, pointing and whispering. Some seemed angry, thinking he was loitering or causing trouble. A few women crossed the street to avoid him. Others approached him carefully, offering coins or food, trying to make sure he was okay. He noticed a pattern. Those who had very little themselves often offered the most. Those who had much sometimes refused even the smallest gesture. It was a lesson in humility he had never expected to learn so profoundly. By late afternoon, fatigue began to set in. Sitting on the curb all day was exhausting, but he didn't want to leave. There was too much to observe, too much to understand. Each person who passed by revealed something new. Each act of kindness, each look of judgment, each whispered comment added another piece to the puzzle he was trying to solve. He felt more connected to the world than ever, even in his disguise. And then something remarkable happened. A local shopkeeper stopped, placing a few coins in his hand. "Don't need anything, just a little help," the shopkeeper said quietly. It wasn't a lot, but the gesture carried weight. The millionaire felt his heart swell. This was humanity at its purest. No cameras, no fame, no wealth, just simple acts of compassion. He realized that even small actions could leave a lasting impression on someone's life, perhaps even change it. As the sun began to set, he reflected on the day. He had seen people act in ways he never imagined. Some were cruel, some were indifferent, some were incredibly kind. He had learned more about human nature in these few hours than he had in decades of business meetings and social events. Money, power, and fame could never reveal the same truth. Today he understood that empathy, generosity, and kindness were priceless qualities. He also thought about his own life, about how often he had walked past someone in need, thinking it wasn't his problem. Today had shown him the reality he had ignored for so long. People struggled every day, some silently, some openly, yet the world often turned away. He had a choice: continue living in his bubble of wealth or step into the real world, learn from it, and use his resources to make a difference. As night fell, he finally stood up, stretching his tired muscles. The city lights reflected off his mansion gates, and for a moment, he felt a strange contrast between his life inside the walls and the world outside. He had started the day as a beggar, invisible to most, and yet he had experienced something richer than money could ever buy. He had seen the best and worst of humanity, and he had learned that compassion often comes from the most unexpected places. Before leaving, he took one last look around. People were still moving through the streets, some rushing home, some stopping to talk to strangers, some ignoring everything around them. He smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring more lessons, more surprises, more glimpses into the hearts of people he had never truly seen before. Today had been powerful, but it was only the beginning. He walked back to his mansion, tired but exhilarated. The experience had changed something inside him. It had opened his eyes, his heart, and his mind. He knew that the next steps in his experiment would reveal even more, and he was eager to see what would happen when the world discovered the truth behind the beggar, sitting quietly in front of the mansion gates. The third day of his experiment began with a feeling of anticipation. He had already seen so much in the last 2 days, yet he knew there was more to learn. Sitting in his disguise once again, he felt the world around him in a way he never had before. Each passerby was a story, each glance a reflection of human nature. Today he wanted to observe deeper connections, those rare moments when people truly cared about someone else, even if they didn't know them. He positioned himself in the usual spot, leaning slightly forward, his hat pulled low over his eyes. It was mid-morning when a young delivery worker approached him, carrying a small bag of food and a bottle of water. The worker stopped and offered them with a smile. "Here, you must be hungry. Take it," he said softly. The millionaire accepted, grateful, and nodded in acknowledgement. But this time he decided to talk, to engage even if cautiously. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Are you busy today?" The young man shook his head. "Not too much. Just deliveries. But I always stop if I see someone who might need help. It's nothing." They began talking slowly, exchanging words about life, work, and daily struggles. The millionaire listened carefully, absorbing every detail. The man spoke of long hours, low pay, and the worry of feeding his family. Yet he did not complain. He spoke with a quiet dignity, showing pride in his work even when life was hard. The millionaire was struck by the honesty in his voice, the resilience in his eyes. This wasn't just kindness, it was courage, patience, and humanity wrapped together. As they talked, a little girl ran past holding her mother's hand. She stopped and offered the beggar a piece of candy. Her mother called after her, but she insisted, her small hand holding out the sweet treat. The millionaire smiled beneath his disguise, feeling the warmth of innocence. Children, he realized, saw the world differently. They did not judge by appearance, nor did they calculate benefit. They gave freely, simply because it felt right. That simple act, almost invisible to most, had a profound effect on him. After the girl ran off, a middle-aged man carrying a briefcase stopped. He looked at the beggar with suspicion at first, then hesitated. He dropped a few coins into the cup without saying a word. The millionaire could see the inner conflict in the man's eyes. He was unsure, embarrassed, yet he acted anyway. It was a small gesture, almost insignificant in value, but it revealed the complexity of human nature. People wanted to do good, yet fear, judgment, and hesitation often held them back. Around midday, a group of teenagers gathered nearby. They stared, whispered, and laughed. Some pointed, others took out their phones as if to record. At first, the millionaire felt irritation, but then he realized something important. This was part of the experiment. People reveal themselves unconsciously. The teenagers were showing a mix of curiosity, amusement, and maybe even discomfort. He understood that judgment is often instinctive, but awareness can teach people to act differently. Then, an unexpected interaction occurred. A man carrying a large box of supplies approached him. "You look like you could use this," he said. The millionaire accepted, asking quietly, "Do you know me?" "No," the man replied. "I don't know anyone here. I just see someone in need and I help. That's all." It was this simplicity that struck him most. No fame, no expectation, no reward, just action. It made him think deeply about how often he had judged people before knowing them. How many opportunities for kindness had he missed because he assumed? Today he realized kindness doesn't require recognition. It exists quietly, waiting to be offered, often from those with very little. By mid-afternoon, fatigue began to settle in, but he refused to leave. He had grown attached to observing the small moments, the tiny acts of humanity that the world often overlooked. A mother stopped with her child, giving him a small cup of water. "Take care," she said, smiling gently. A street sweeper offered a sandwich he had packed for lunch. Even strangers with hard lives struggling to survive themselves reached out with compassion. It was humbling, moving, and inspiring all at once. During a quiet moment, he noticed a man sitting across the street on a bench, watching him. There was something different about the man's gaze, not judgmental, not dismissive, but thoughtful. The millionaire caught his eye and nodded slightly. The man nodded back, understanding, as if recognizing the shared humanity between them. It was a fleeting moment, yet it left a lasting impression. He realized that understanding and empathy could cross barriers even without words. As the sun started to tilt westward, more people passed by. A delivery woman offered a bottle of juice, refusing any acknowledgement. She walked away quickly, as if embarrassed by her own generosity. Yet it was genuine. The millionaire accepted quietly, reflecting on how many acts of kindness go unseen. Most people never notice, and yet those acts matter deeply to the person receiving them. He began to feel a responsibility, not just as an observer, but as someone who had resources and influence, to act in ways that could amplify this quiet generosity in the world. The afternoon passed slowly, each interaction leaving him with new thoughts and emotions. He saw people's true selves, not filtered through appearances or social expectations, but revealed in moments of choice. Some chose kindness, some hesitation, some judgment, some cruelty, but each act told a story, and he was learning to read those stories to understand the hearts behind the faces. Late in the day, an elderly man approached. He had a gentle face, weathered hands, and a quiet presence. He offered a small loaf of bread and some coins, placing them carefully beside the beggar. The millionaire looked at him and asked softly, "Why do you do this?" The old man smiled. "Because it's right. That's all. Life is hard enough without turning away from people who need help. Some give more, some give less. It doesn't matter. It's the willingness that counts." Those words struck him like a bolt of lightning. It was simple, yet profound. He realized that the measure of humanity is not in how much one gives, but in the willingness to act, even in small ways. The humility and wisdom of the old man left him speechless. He thanked him quietly, feeling a deep sense of connection to someone he would have likely overlooked in ordinary circumstances. As evening approached, the city began to quiet down. Streetlights flickered on, casting a soft glow over the streets. He noticed a few people stopping, offering small gestures, then walking away. Some glanced back, curious, some embarrassed, some simply unaware of the significance of their actions. The millionaire understood now that life is made up of these small, almost invisible acts that ripple quietly through the world. Finally, as the sky darkened, he knew it was time to leave. He rose slowly, tired yet invigorated. Sitting there for hours, observing, listening, interacting, had changed him. He had seen cruelty and indifference, yes, but he had also seen immense generosity, courage, and kindness. Today had taught him that humanity is complex, unpredictable, and beautiful. He had learned more about people than he ever had in meetings, parties, or social gatherings. Walking back toward his mansion, he felt a strange combination of humility and empowerment. He had been a beggar, invisible, ignored, and yet he had witnessed the best parts of humanity. Each interaction had left a mark on him, shaping his understanding of life in ways that money could never achieve. He realized that true wealth is not measured in coins or possessions, but in the ability to see, understand, and act with empathy. As he entered his mansion, he paused for a moment, looking back at the street. He knew that the experiment was far from over. Tomorrow, he planned to see even more, to test human behavior in ways he had not yet imagined. The anticipation was almost thrilling. What would happen if he revealed his true identity? Would people react with surprise, shame, or admiration? Or would they simply continue as before, unchanged? The thought both excited and worried him. He sat quietly in his study, reflecting on the day. Each moment outside, each human interaction had been a lesson. The generosity of strangers, the innocence of children, the courage of the hardworking, the quiet wisdom of the elderly, all of it formed a tapestry of life he had never truly seen. He realized that the experiment was not just about observing others, it was also about discovering himself, his capacity for empathy, humility, and understanding. Finally, as night settled over the mansion, he made a silent promise. He would continue this experiment, not just for curiosity, but to learn, to change, and perhaps to inspire change in others. He understood now that every small act of kindness mattered. Every human connection mattered. And tomorrow, he would continue to sit in his disguise, to watch, to learn, and to experience life as the world truly was. Unfiltered, unpredictable, and profoundly human. The next morning felt different. He had been at this experiment for several days now, and each day had shown him a side of the world he had never seen before. People's kindness, indifference, and judgment had all left marks on him, shaping his understanding of life and humanity. But today he felt a sense of urgency, almost a thrill. He wanted to see what would happen if he pushed the boundaries just a little. Today he decided he would not only observe, he would interact more boldly, gently testing people's reactions and seeing the truth in their hearts. He prepared his disguise carefully. Every piece of clothing, every bit of dirt on his face was designed to make him unrecognizable. He wanted the illusion to be perfect. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. He was no longer the wealthy homeowner. He was someone the world could easily overlook, someone who might be judged or ignored, yet also someone who might inspire small acts of kindness. That was exactly what he wanted. He walked slowly to the curb in front of his mansion and settled in. Almost immediately, he noticed a change in the atmosphere. People who had previously ignored him now seemed more aware. Children pointed, neighbors whispered, and a few passers-by slowed their pace. He remained quiet, observing carefully, letting people reveal themselves in natural ways. Within an hour, a young woman walking past stopped and handed him a small bottle of water. She smiled and said, "Here, I hope this helps." She didn't linger, but the gesture carried warmth. A man on a bicycle slowed, glanced at him curiously, then dropped a few coins into his cup. The millionaire noticed that these small acts of kindness were not always public. People often gave quietly, avoiding attention, yet the impact of their actions was profound. Then came a moment that surprised him. A neighbor, someone who had often waved politely from across the street, approached angrily. "What are you doing here?" the neighbor demanded. "You can't just loiter in front of my property." The millionaire, still in disguise, stayed calm and explained softly, "I'm just resting. I mean no harm." The neighbor's face twisted in frustration. "This is ridiculous. Someone needs to call the police." The millionaire realized it was the perfect moment to reveal himself. Slowly, carefully, he removed his hat, pulled away the dirt from his face, and adjusted his clothing to show his true appearance. The neighbor's jaw dropped. The man standing in front of him was not a beggar at all. It was the millionaire, the owner of the very mansion behind him. Shock rippled through the street. People who had been watching from windows, sidewalks, and passing cars froze in disbelief. Some covered their mouths with their hands, unable to speak. Others stared openly, eyes wide with surprise. The millionaire smiled gently, raising his hand in greeting. "It's true," he said. "I wanted to see the world as it truly is, to understand how people treat one another and to learn from it myself." The reactions were mixed. Some neighbors laughed nervously, embarrassed for having judged him so quickly. A few people whispered apologies, realizing they had acted without knowing the truth. Others seemed stunned, unsure of what to say or do. It was a strange, electric moment, one that revealed more about human nature than anything else. People were confronted with the truth, forced to face their assumptions and their behavior. A young delivery worker who had offered him food the day before approached cautiously. I didn't know," he stammered. The millionaire smiled warmly. "It doesn't matter," he said. "Your kindness was real, and that is what counts." The worker nodded, relief and pride washing over his face. This small exchange showed him that human connection, even when misunderstood, could be genuine and powerful. Then a little girl, the same one who had offered him candy, ran up. "You're the man from the house," she exclaimed, pointing. "The one who sits outside." Her mother laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. The millionaire knelt down and smiled at her. "Yes, that's me. And thank you for your kindness yesterday. You made my day brighter." The girl grinned, proud of her small act that had meant so much. The crowd began to gather. Some clapped, some cheered, some simply watched in amazement. People began to speak openly about what they had done, what they had thought, and how they had reacted. It was as if the reveal had broken an invisible barrier, allowing people to express their true feelings. Apologies were offered, smiles were shared, and even laughter echoed down the street. The millionaire watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. This was more than a lesson, it was a revelation. As the afternoon progressed, people approached him with questions. "Why did you do this?" one asked. "I wanted to see the truth," he replied. "I wanted to understand how people behave when appearances don't matter, when wealth and status are invisible. Today I've learned more about kindness, empathy, and humanity than I ever could have imagined." Some people were emotional. A few neighbors admitted they had judged him harshly, assuming the worst. Others confessed that they had ignored someone in need, feeling guilty now. The millionaire listened, nodding with understanding. He did not scold or lecture. His goal had never been to shame anyone. It was to show that small acts of kindness, awareness, and empathy matter, and that everyone has the capacity to make a difference. Then came a quiet, unforgettable moment. An elderly man approached, carrying a small loaf of bread. "I saw you yesterday," he said. "I didn't know you were the owner of this house, but I felt that you might need this." The millionaire smiled, touched by the sincerity. "Thank you," he said gently. "It wasn't about me. It was about human kindness, and that is something I will never forget." As the sun began to set, the atmosphere shifted from shock to reflection. People stood around talking quietly, sharing their thoughts and experiences. The reveal had not only surprised them, but it had made them think deeply about their actions and the way they treated others. For the millionaire, this was the most important part. His experiment had gone beyond personal curiosity. It had sparked a small awakening, a reminder that appearances can deceive, and that kindness can be found in the most unexpected places. By evening, the crowd had thinned, but the impact lingered. The millionaire stood outside his mansion, looking at the street, reflecting on the lessons of the day. He had learned that fear, judgment, and assumptions often prevent people from showing compassion. But he had also seen that even the smallest gestures, offering food, a coin, a smile, carry immense power. They can change a person's day, inspire hope, and remind the world that humanity is alive in every action. Finally, as night fell, he walked back into his mansion, tired but profoundly moved. The reveal had been shocking, yes, but it had also been transformative. He had not only discovered the truth about how people reacted to him as a beggar, but he had also uncovered the quiet power of human kindness. Every smile, every gesture, every act of empathy mattered. The world was complicated, unpredictable, and often harsh, but within it existed endless opportunities for connection, understanding, and goodness. That night, he made a silent promise to himself. He would continue to use his wealth and influence not just for personal gain, but to nurture compassion, to create opportunities, and to support those who might otherwise be overlooked. He understood now that true power lies not in riches, but in the ability to inspire, to help, and to lift others. The lessons of the day would stay with him forever, shaping the way he lived, acted, and viewed the world around him. He realized that his experiment had done more than reveal human behavior. It had changed him. He felt more connected, more humble, and more aware of the quiet struggles and triumphs of ordinary people. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring a new chapter, a continuation of his journey to understand life, humanity, and the hidden beauty of kindness. The next morning, the millionaire woke up with a sense of calm determination. The reveal the day before had been shocking for everyone, but it had also been a turning point for him. Sitting outside his mansion in disguise had opened his eyes to so many truths about human nature, kindness, and empathy. Today he wanted to take all that he had learned and begin to put it into action, not as a curious experiment, but as a conscious effort to make a difference. He walked through the mansion quietly, thinking about what he had seen. Children sharing candy, delivery workers offering food, strangers dropping coins into his cup, neighbors hesitating, judging, and apologizing. All of it formed a picture of the world he had never fully understood. Wealth had insulated him from these experiences for years. Money could buy comfort, status, and convenience, but it could not teach him how to truly observe life, how to feel the subtle currents of human emotion, or how to recognize acts of compassion that often went unnoticed. He dressed not in his usual fine clothes, but in something simple and approachable. He wanted to meet the world not as a millionaire, but as a human being who could relate, connect, and support those around him. With a small bag of supplies prepared, food, bottled water, basic necessities, he stepped outside. His first stop was the local street where he had spent the last several days observing life. People recognized him now, not as the beggar from the past, but as the millionaire from the mansion. Yet this time he walked with humility, offering his presence and help without expectation or show. The delivery worker from before spotted him first. His eyes widened in recognition, and a warm smile spread across his face. "I can't believe you're here," he said. "I thought yesterday was unbelievable." The millionaire smiled. "I'm here because I want to help. Yesterday taught me more than I could ever have imagined, and today I want to make a real difference." Together they went around the neighborhood, quietly helping those in need. He handed out sandwiches, water bottles, and small essentials, not with fanfare, but with a gentle smile and kind words. People were surprised, but not just by the gifts. They were surprised by his attention, his genuine care, his willingness to stop, listen, and acknowledge them. It was a small act in the eyes of the world, but monumental in its effect on each person he touched. As he walked further, he noticed a young boy sitting alone on a bench looking tired and hungry. The millionaire approached slowly and sat beside him. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The boy shrugged. "I'm fine," he said quietly, avoiding eye contact. "You look hungry," the millionaire said, offering a sandwich. "You don't have to be embarrassed. Everyone needs a little help sometimes." The boy hesitated, then accepted the food. As he ate, he began to talk. He spoke of school, struggles at home, and the small joys he found each day. The millionaire listened carefully, nodding, offering encouragement without judgment. In this simple act, he realized something profound. Connection and understanding could matter even more than material help. Sometimes listening and showing that someone cares was the greatest gift of all. As he continued walking through the city streets, more people began to notice him. Some recognized him immediately and waved. Others were still surprised, remembering him as the beggar who had quietly observed life from the curb. A few approached hesitantly, unsure how to act, but when he spoke with warmth and humility, their fears melted away. People shared their stories, their struggles, their dreams, and he listened patiently, offering encouragement and small acts of kindness wherever possible. He reached a local school where he had seen children playing during his experiment. He spoke with the principal and teachers, offering support for meals, supplies, and extracurricular activities. "I want to help," he said simply, "not to be praised, but because every child deserves an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to feel valued." The staff was moved by his sincerity, and the students were overjoyed to receive small gifts and necessities, all quietly provided yet making a lasting impression. Walking further, he noticed an elderly couple struggling to carry groceries. Without hesitation, he approached and offered to help. They looked at him, shocked at first, then smiled warmly as he carried the bags for them. "Thank you, young man," the elderly woman said. "It's rare to see such kindness these days." The millionaire nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he had rarely experienced in his life of wealth. This was more rewarding than any luxury, more fulfilling than any business success. He had begun to understand that wealth was not measured in money alone, but in the ability to care, to act, and to inspire positive change in the lives of others. As the day progressed, word began to spread about the millionaire's quiet efforts in the neighborhood. People who had once ignored him, judged him, or assumed the worst now saw him in a new light. They witnessed his genuine concern for others and his willingness to give without expecting anything in return. Some approached him, apologizing for their earlier judgment. Others simply thanked him, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of someone who had so much yet chose to share what he could. By late afternoon, he returned to the street where his experiment had started. He sat on the curb for a while, reflecting on the days that had passed. He thought about the lessons he had learned, that kindness often comes from those with the least, that appearances can deceive, that judgment can blind people to the humanity around them, and that even the smallest gestures can make a tremendous difference. He noticed the same children from before running past, waving and smiling. The delivery worker walked by, giving him a nod of recognition. Even the elderly couple passed, smiling warmly. He realized that these moments were more than small interactions. They were connections, bridges built through care, empathy, and attention. In this, he found a sense of fulfillment he had never known in all his years of wealth. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, he stood up, feeling a quiet pride, not in himself, but in the world around him. He had learned that even in a world that often seemed indifferent or harsh, there was abundant kindness. It was not always easy to see, but it existed in small acts, in moments of courage, in choices made quietly and without expectation. Walking back to his mansion, he reflected on his journey. The experiment had started as a simple curiosity, a desire to see how people treated a beggar. But it had grown into something far deeper, a lesson in humility, empathy, and human connection. He,